media at the time.
Gotcha.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's the first time I'm having a guest on in a while, but this one was too good to pass up. Today, I'm going to be joined by Empire Flippers CEO and founder, too.
No founder, no. Just
okay.
CEO. We can talk about that.
Okay, cool. CEO Andy Allaway. It's going to be a great conversation. There's a lot to get into here, but as usual, the most important thing about having a great guest on like this is it means less work for me to do. So I'm looking forward to it. Andy, how's it going?
Cool. Yeah, all good this end. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. So I introduced you a little bit, but I actually don't know a lot of your backstory either. So maybe you can kind of just walk us to where you started and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, of course. No worries. So yeah, I'm from the UK. And I guess like my pre-Empire Flippers world, I was kind of in sales and sales management roles in the IT industry. I got to about 30 and got like totally bored of that, decided to kind of go off traveling for a year. And then when I came back, I was like, I have to find a way to kind of like work and explore the world a little bit as well. And that kind of initially led me down the path of like content sites and building out small affiliate sites and stuff like that. And through that, I found Empire Flippers pretty early in kind of their life cycle. So I joined Empire Flippers in 2017, so about 8 years ago. And most of the time that I've been in the business, I was running the operations department, which is kind of our vetting and our migration customer service teams. And then I guess like over the last 2 years, I kind of stepped in and taken over we have 2 US co-founders, but I've kind of taken over the running of the business from them over the last couple of years.
Wonderful. And so that's interesting. Like I said, I've only just met you a little bit, but I started in IT as well, and I also hated it. So, I've heard that story from a lot of people in our industry, and it's an interesting transition, I think, and there's definitely a pattern to it. And then I also got started with affiliates, so it's interesting to see that pattern. But you kind of, how did you found them as a customer, or how did you get connected with them?
No, so initially, like I said, I was kind of building out some small affiliate sites, and at that time, the Authority Hacker guys, that was kind of like one of the biggest courses in town, and I was like part of that group, and I used to listen to their podcast a lot back then. And in like early 2017, they had Justin, one of our co-founders, on, kind of talking about selling affiliate sites and stuff like that. And I think he maybe even mentioned on that podcast that they were kind of like hiring for some of their first roles back then. And that's kind of how I found out about them.
Oh, okay. Well, then how did you, if you don't mind me asking, of course, how did you go from just starting working with them into the role that you're in now?
Yeah, sure. So I was quite an early hire. When Empire Flippers first started, it was kind of like Justin and Joe, the 2 founders. They had a small team in the Philippines, and then they were kind of gradually adding some kind of more hires into the business. So I was pretty early in, and we were growing nicely. So part of it was kind of I grew with the business, and so most of the time, like I say, I was part of the management team as director of operations, and then. It was always we never like were building to intentionally exit, but we were always like, hey, something could happen along those lines. And so one of the things we did really consciously was like and we can talk about this maybe a little bit, but like try to make it not reliant on the founders, right? Which is kind of obviously super important when you're trying to sell a business.
Yeah.
So we had a management team in place who were kind of running the day-to-day of the business. I was part of that. And then it just kind of became as a natural progression of that. I guess like mid 2023, it kind of made sense for kind of me to step up and run the business.
Okay. Just in case some of our audience, I'm assuming most people know, but can you maybe tell us what Empire Flippers is, just in case somebody watching doesn't know?
Yeah, of course. So we're effectively a marketplace for buying and selling online businesses. So we sell content sites, e-commerce businesses, SaaS services, quite a lot of YouTube channels these days, anything else on the Amazon ecosystem. And yeah, I kind of, where we sit in the market is at the one end of buying and selling online businesses. You have kind of like the the pure marketplace plays, which is like a lot of tech, not many people, more DIY type service. Then at the other end, you have kind of like, I guess, more traditional broker relationships, low tech, but kind of high touch. And we kind of sit in the middle. We have like a real good platform. We have a big engineering team, but we also have a team of like 40 odd people as well. And we kind of like handhold through the process. And we're also a vetted marketplace as well. So, if you go to other places, you'll see maybe like thousands and thousands of listings. We typically have about 150 listings at any one time. We reject 90% of the submissions we get. So we have kind of like a quality bar on our marketplace too.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense because without mentioning any names, there's a couple that I've like looked at in the past. I'll just say one of them because I think it's garbage, but Acquire, I can't even figure out their interface when I've tried to like buy stuff. Like I can't figure out the filters or any of that stuff. So that's good to know that, and not only is it good, like from a user experience, is just from looking at stuff, but it's good to know that it's not pardon my language, but it's not bullshit, like, revenue numbers and traffic numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all the stuff we try to straighten out in our vetting process. We want buyers to be able to come to our marketplace, and due diligence is still the buyer's responsibility. They have to dig into the details and stuff, but we want them to know when they look at a listing on Empire Flippers that it has like a basic level of checking on the information like traffic and earnings, and they can focus their time on the is it right for me type due diligence basically.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, as you know, I have a marketplace as well, and it's not an easy business. From the outside in, apparently it looks like it because I have a lot of people that seem to think that it's just, I'm just stacking cash every day and there's no problems and there's no, it's a lot, right? Like you have essentially two businesses that you're running because you have I call it the chicken and the egg problem. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about the minute I say that, but you have to get enough supply. I don't like calling them supply and demand because I find that demeaning, but for the sake of this conversation, that's what I'm calling. You have to have enough customers to make sure that there are people to buy, but you also have enough people to buy to make sure that your customers want to keep coming there. Running a marketplace is hard is kind of the summary of that. So can you talk about some of the challenges there? I'm actually hoping to get some insight from you on that myself.
Yeah. I mean, you summed it up perfectly. Of course, the two-sided marketplace is definitely chicken and egg. I think there's two things that back in the early days really set Empire Flippers off on the right foot. One was, so the way that Empire Flippers came about, originally our founders, Justin and Joe, were running a business called AdSense Flippers, right? And they basically had a team that would build out these small AdSense sites, and they would get a bit of ad revenue coming in. And back in those days, the only place to kind of really sell sites like that was on Flipper.com. And Flipper.com, back then was the absolute Wild West in terms of like quality listings and stuff like that. And with content sites in particular, everything would be public on their site. There'd be loads and loads of copying and stuff like that. And so basically, Joe and Justin just kind of started selling the sites via their own website, basically AdSense Flippers at the time. And they had people reach out to them and say, hey, could I put my small content site or whatever on there as well? And so I guess like it kind of grew very organically there, and there was a real obvious need. Again, going back to certain marketplaces where the bar for quality is way lower. From the early days, like vetting has been the lifeblood of what we offer as a business, and so that was like a very clear need. And then the other thing that they did really well back then was that they were, kind of part of the building public crowd as well, and so they were super, financials and quarterly plans, like everything would be published on the website, even like bad stuff that happened. There was a time before my time where they like got scammed out of some money and they wrote about that and stuff like that. So they amassed this like real hardcore following among other kind of digital nomad remote entrepreneurs. And so I think like all of that built to a point where, we had and still continue to have really strong inbound on like both sides of our marketplace. And of course there's two sides to it, right? Definitely a two-sided marketplace has some of those chicken and egg struggles, but it also means that like once you get to a critical mass, it's like it acts as a bit of a moat as well, because new people on the block kind of have that same pain they have to overcome, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of parallels I heard there because like, the story background on Legit, I don't want to talk about me too much, but I was a freelancer and I was using a marketplace, and then that marketplace went to shit. And so I started selling my stuff through my own site, and I'd made friends with some of the freelancers on that marketplace. And they were like, well, can we start selling through your site too? And I was like, well, maybe I'm onto something here. So it's like, it's almost exactly the same thing.
It is. Yeah. That's awesome.
It's interesting how that happened. The fraud part hits home for me too, because that's a nonstop problem that we have had. But and still,
yeah, I mean, I think like I forget the exact story, but it was like back in the days when the sites that were being sold were, while Empire Flippers were like so small that people could put them on a credit card, for example. And I think from memory, it was something along those lines, something kind of credit card chargeback related.
I was gonna say that sounds like what happened. Because a problem we ran into in the beginning too is people basically trying to get shit for free because they buy it and then they just do a chargeback, and you're always going to lose chargebacks because the companies do not care.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah, and then a lot of that makes a lot of sense to me. And the other thing is that you said that it's like it becomes a moat, and you're right, because I've had people that, maybe this is a compliment, but maybe I just make it look easy. I don't know, but I've had people say, I'm going to try that too, and like go and start their own and fail just spectacularly in like weeks. So, because you've built in that distribution and that loyalty from people. Because what I did, and I didn't know this is what I was doing, but I built like a Facebook group that became like my following and the initial customers for us. And of course, it's grown significantly since then. But I guess the point of that is that distribution is a thing that you can't put a price on, right? Like it becomes your moat, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And, we have, over the years, you'll see competitors in our space pop up and, always try to do something inventive on pricing, like, kind of make it free for sellers and stuff like that. But like you reach a point where the financials of that just like don't stack up, and they always follow the same pattern, which is like free for sellers, small fee for buyers, and then within like 12 months they've all reverted back to like, oh, we're going to charge the seller something because it's the only way the model makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because the one that I have in mind did exactly that. Like no fee for relevant, and now they've like had to switch to a whole different model. So
sure.
It's good it's almost like I'm interviewing myself. To be honest. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. I'm thinking what most people are going to be interested to hear from you is, you said you vet the people trying to sell sites on your marketplace. What makes for a good sellable digital business? Like if I was to come to you and say I want to sell, I'm not just, there's no confusion, I'm not actually saying this, but if I want to say I want to sell my site, what would you look at? What would you consider, that sort of thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I think like I always say that the number one thing a buyer is asking when they review a business is, what happens to this business if I take the seller out of it, right? And so, to that, if you were, what makes a good business to sell is kind of ones where the seller has thought about that. And that could be, like a team in place that manages different aspects of the business. If the seller is working like 40, 50 hours in the business and are kind of at the center of everything, then it's like tough to convince a buyer that the business is going to run just as well after they take over. Related to that, things like well-documented SOPs and what have you. And then like good, clean financials. We will help build profit and loss and stuff as part of our vetting process, but like that's super important. And obviously like, if the business is performing well, i.e. at least steady or growing, then that's incredibly helpful. But then you kind of fall into the trap of trying to kind of wait for the perfect moment to sell your business. And I think like what the last couple of years, just like globally in the economy, have shown is like that can be kind of a dangerous game too, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially in industries like online business, because like you're dependent on Google for traffic. They can flip a switch and your whole business goes away, or that somebody can launch a chat engine and then that replace, you know what I mean? Like, or just a pandemic starts and your whole business goes away. So there's a lot of like, a single points of failure is probably a thing I don't know if that's true, but that's something I would definitely consider.
It's 100% true. And it's actually a really good additional point to answer your previous question, which is like what makes a business kind of attractive to buyers. Like one of the things is diversity. And, if it's diversity of traffic or even like diversity of products that the revenue is split over, all of that kind of increases the multiple and increases the chance of sale.
Yeah. Like some of the things that we have struggled with is most of our revenue initially came just from from marketplace sales and getting a percentage of the freelancers thing. We've tried to diversify by having like ad sales. We have some software built in. We have some training. We have like a few, like to the point where now it's like almost 50-50. One of my goals for the year is to get that 50-50. Another problem you mentioned is the dependent upon the founder. And that's definitely a problem for us, because like, I don't want this to sound like I'm like praising myself, but like a lot of it, the trust people have is tied to me.
Sure.
And if I was to go away, there are people that would just never use the platform again. So I'm not looking to sell, so it doesn't really matter. But if I was, that's a problem. And you know, Alex Hormozy always says, build your business to sell, even if you're not trying to sell it, because it's just for your business. So that's something I'm trying to strike a balance with. So that's good to hear that that's something to work on, you know?
Yeah, and like I think that there's a lot of truth in that Hormozy quote as well, which is like a lot of the times when we're giving people advice on like how to best position your business for sale, a lot of it is the same advice as just like how to operate a business really well. You know, have SOPs, have a team in place, stuff like that. So I think that's true, and yeah, I mean, we definitely see that. I mean, I personally, I love these little businesses where like somebody has some kind of like specialist knowledge or expertise and they build a small business around it. Like I love little businesses like that, but they're really tough to sell, right? And again, it goes back to that core question a buyer asks is like, what happens when I take the seller out of the business? So yeah, I mean, like I was mentioning earlier, we sell a lot of YouTube channels at the moment. And for the most part, the ones that sell are the ones that people like building these faceless YouTube videos, right? Where they have real strong processes, editors, and there might be a little bit of secret sauce the seller has in terms of like picking the right keywords and topic research and stuff like that. But it's kind of transferable, it's teachable, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like it's a whole different thing. Like if you are the face of your, like I couldn't sell my YouTube channel, even though I get a ton of traffic, because it's all me talking. So that's interesting to look at. So I'm trying to think of like a corporate example, but for the most part, the biggest companies like avoid that key man risk, other than maybe some of like Elon Musk's companies. So
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Probably even them. I mean, like another example that we see a reasonable amount as well is, you know, over the last few years, I guess it's not quite as popular now, but obviously like drop shipping was huge, right?
Yeah.
You know, we've sold plenty of drop shipping businesses, but there's a certain type of drop shipping business back in the day that would be like, you know, the kind of AliExpress shipping to somebody. And those businesses, I mean, some of them would make like money that would make your eyes water, like crazy amounts of money, but they were effectively like the seller had insane at the time like Facebook ad skills,
Right.
And again they breached that core question, which is like you take the seller out of the business and like how much of a business is there really, you know?
Right. It's almost like they are a freelancer and the business is their product rather than them actually having a business. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, it's along those lines. Yeah.
So let's look at it from the other side. If I'm a customer and I'm like, I've got some extra dough, I want to invest in a business, and I'm going to ask it at a couple different levels. If I have like $3,000 or $4,000, which is not very much, no offense to anyone that's a lot of money too, but what would I look for? And then if I'm like at the like I want to spend $1 million, like what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like what is somebody looking for? Just like to pick up a little side hustle to scale, as versus somebody like buying a life-changing business.
Yeah. So I think like, you know, if you're in that kind of like, let's say sub 10,000 range, we don't have listings of that size on Empire Flippers because our minimum is kind of like $2,000 a month net profit. So you don't typically see too much below kind of like 50K or so on our marketplace. We've recently acquired a small website called moneynomad.com. Kind of exactly for this reason, to kind of because we get a lot of people wanting to sell businesses that size, right? And at the moment we just kind of turn them away or kind of send them to a competitor that we would think is kind of inferior. And so we kind of bought this little site with a view to like taking some of those and trying to offer something. We're kind of just in the launching stage at the moment. But yeah, I think like, you know, if in that price range, you either whatever you do with that kind of amount of money, you have to kind of think of it as a learning experience, I think, right? You know, there's an argument that if you're in the kind of 3 to 4K to spend, that probably you should like do a bunch of research and buy a course on a particular model and like build from scratch potentially, or buy, like you say, a small side project that maybe has like a little bit of income, but kind of treat it as a learning experience. And then, yeah, we have a lot of 6 and 7 figure businesses on our marketplace. At kind of like the $1 million range, you're buying a business which is, making several $100,000 a year in profit, is very likely going to have all of those like systems and a bit of a team and SOPs in place and stuff like that. Obviously, at that level, when you're putting that much money down, you want to be buying something that you know a lot about, right? You want to make sure that you can kind of like maintain it and grow it, and you have some kind of an edge there.
Yeah. Regarding the first model, that's another angle somebody might take, and I know this because it's something I've done. Is I find I've never used your site because these are smaller values, but I find ones that are like I can pick up for $1, $2, $3, $5,000 that are parallel to what I already do.
Yeah,
and I can just take and apply my brand to it, and just from one email, like get my money back, and then scale it. That has worked pretty well for me. I've picked up a few different projects that way. It's not super profitable, but it is profitable. Like it's not going to like retire me, but it's what it's doing is building up my ecosystem, and just it looks good. Like it gives me credibility to say I bought this business and instantly turned a profit on it, kind of thing. So that's another angle people can take if they have an existing customer base, is to buy something parallel to what they do, right?
Totally, yeah. And that, like, that kind of strategic acquisition tactic works the whole way up the kind of value stack as well, right? Like there are plenty of people buying the $1 million businesses that are doing that because they can tie it into their current ecosystem, and 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, I use this example a lot, but like Mr. Beast is fantastic at that, because he's just taking his brand now and just applying it to like a chocolate bar or an energy drink or something, and he's just, now that he has that established, he can just pick up things and just add it to his whatever. I also learned that on Shark Tank from I forget his real name, but Mr. Wonderful does that a lot too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Then you mentioned the vetting and all the things like that. Like it's still probably a scary thing for a lot of people to send that kind of money through a platform. Like how does that process work? I assume that there's like, because I'm learning about your business as well as we talk about it. But is there kind of an escrow, or how does it work if I want to go buy, a $150,000 business today?
Yeah, exactly. So like it can vary a little bit deal to deal, but either there's a third party escrow, or Empire Flippers will act as the escrow. The actually, for somebody that's kind of nervous about sending money around, obviously using some kind of intermediary is super important, right? You wouldn't want to cold outreach to a seller and kind of like send them the money, or somebody has to kind of take the risk on that. So yeah, the way that we'll do it is kind of typically we'll hold the funds. We also, as part of our service, we offer the migration of the business as well, right? So we have a migration team. So it tends to work pretty nicely that like, but once a deal has been agreed, buyer will send the funds to us. We're then responsible for moving over all of the assets, domains, all that kind of stuff, accounts, depending on the business. And then once everything's kind of been moved and verified and what have you, then we'll release the funds to the seller. It's typically the way it works.
That makes a lot of sense. And this is too like personal or whatever, let's just say so, but how do you protect yourself, like your platform, from that? Because that's a risk that we expose ourselves to all the time on Legit, is we're the merchant of record. So if somebody does a perfect job and delivers, and somebody's like, I want that for free, and does a chargeback, not really much we can do. I mean, we can make our case, but like I said earlier, credit card companies do not care. They're always going to side with the customer. So how are you guys protected? Again, if you don't mind me asking.
No, it's cool. It's relatively straightforward because we don't do anything on credit cards these days, right? So everything is like wires.
Okay.
Pretty much, well, all of the deals that go through our marketplace have like purchase agreements and stuff like that. So it's relatively straightforward, as long as everybody sticks to the terms of the deal. And then if they don't, then they have to take kind of more official avenues to kind of like, to go further in that, basically.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wish that I wish our transaction value was high enough to warrant that, but because it exposes us to a lot of risk, because it does. Like, I don't really know, but anyway, that's good to know. I'm sure that was hard to like, you probably weren't there at that point, but that was probably hard to like work out the flow for that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it take a long time.
Yeah. like I say, back in the early days, there definitely were some sites that we did take credit cards. But then there was one particular incident that put an end to that again before my time. So yeah, I mean, and sometimes on the larger deals, it will involve kind of like third-party escrows, whether it's a lawyer or an escrow service that looks after it. But yeah, I mean, it all tends to be relatively straightforward at those deal sizes.
Okay. We got a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
One is from Yash. He says, what are some underrated red flags you look for when evaluating whether a business is truly sustainable, considering AI world, not just profitable on paper? That's a good question.
It is a good question. Yeah. And, obviously kind of AI impacting all different business models at the moment. I think so in our vetting process, we'll ask about AI and stuff like that. And, we want, so just to go back to kind of like my dropshipping example, we wouldn't list a business like that where it's just the seller and AliExpress and Facebook ads, because we don't really think it is that sustainable. But it's more that because it's not sustainable, we don't think anyone will buy it. And I would say that whether or not a business is sustainable, I mean, all businesses have risks and opportunities, right? And I would say whether a business is sustainable in kind of like an AI marching towards AI kind of world, we would consider that really like a buyer's decision to make, right? Now, what we do in our vetting process is we ask for a minimum of 12 months of kind of earnings above our requirement, and ideally more, right? Ideally a couple of years. So, it's enough to at least show that the business has sustained for a decent period of time. And then I think where will the world be in a couple of years, and will the business still sustain? Obviously, that's mostly an AI question at the moment, but you can ask that on a bunch of different axes as well. Yeah. I think that's kind of for buyers to assess and decide, basically. It's a risk question.
I agree. And I've always thought that we sell a lot of SEO services, and people buy something for the wrong use sometimes. And then they blame us for that. And do you run into that where somebody buys a business and it tanks and they try to blame you for it for misrepresenting?
I think
I know it's not, you didn't misrepresent, but
yeah, of course. I mean, I would say, to be honest, ones that come up where buyers feel that something was really misrepresented is kind of rare. But definitely people buy businesses and sometimes they don't perform, right?
Yeah.
Normally, when I see those examples though, normally that's because a buyer has bought a business which they kind of they don't have the skills to run, to be frank.
Yeah.
And we do, again, it's not our responsibility to tell buyers what to buy and what not to buy, but we want deals to go well. It's much better for our reputation if deals go well. And we do for the parties as well, but even on a selfish note. So if we, we will try and guide buyers towards businesses that make sense. I had one sometime last year, a lady I was speaking to, and we had an app, an iOS app business on the marketplace at the moment. And, she was like, I think I want to buy this one. And, she was like, what's this thing? Swift. I don't know what this is. And that's the coding language for iOS. And I was just like, that's the one time where I've said, I'm not going to sell you this business. I will talk to you about some businesses that might, but that one would have been that would 100% not have gone well, So if we see something that egregious, that's kind of rare, then we would step in. And the only, what we try and do is just give as good honest advice as we can.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you buy anything, you are kind of making your own decision at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, caveat emptor. So,
right.
I have a question over here from a gentleman in Slack, and his name is Gregory Elfrink.
Oh dear.
And he says, he tells me that you've gone to every Weatherspoons in the UK. How has that affected multiples?
Do you know what Weatherspoons is?
I don't.
Okay, yeah, it's a chain of very low market pubs in the UK, very cheap beer. There's one in every town in the UK. They're not the kind of places I frequent. Greg has a very unhealthy obsession with them. I did meet a guy on holiday a couple of years ago who actually was trying to go to every Weatherspoons, and he was proudly telling me he'd been to a couple that were behind different like airport security parts and stuff like that. So I met a guy who did that, but not me personally.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Gregory also works at Empire Flippers. He's director of marketing. Is that right?
He's our director of marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. We use the same YouTube agency, and I messaged him in Slack when I knew I was going to be talking to you to get like some insider information, and that's all he would give me. He also said that you're fantastic, by the way. So,
okay, I was getting closer.
So, okay. So, as a CEO, I myself, the perception of what I do from people is much different than what I actually do. A lot of times I get asked, can you do like a vlog of what you do? It's like, bro, I wake up and I go to my computer and I do stuff and then I go to bed. It's not very vlog worthy. So I think a lot of our watchers, whatever the right term for that is, will be interested in that. What's your day like?
Like a typical day? Yeah. Yeah. So I think like, one thing we have at Empire Flippers is like I have a real solid management team, which Greg is a part of, right? So we have Greg, and then we have the kind of director of operations, engineering, finance. And so those guys, do a lot of the kind of day-to-day stuff, running the teams and things like that. I am at the moment, I've kind of stepped in a little more directly to kind of run our sales team. So that kind of takes a decent portion of my time. And then, I try to, although I'm very bad at this, but like actually take some time away from the laptop to like actually think about where we're trying to go as a business over the next couple of years and stuff like that. That's a work in progress for sure, because you do just kind of get sucked into the day to day. And then, I'm also, again, going back to the, us having kind of previously two co-founders who were the face of the business. And Greg has actually done a pretty good job at stepping into that void for us over the last few years. And
I thought he was CEO for a long time.
Right. He likes to kind of spin that. He doesn't like nip that rumor in the bud, I've noticed. But but I'm trying to do a bit of that as well, kind of get out and talk about what we do a little bit. But, we're a pretty small company. We're 40 people. We are all in our Slack kind of all day, kind of trying to fix issues and move things forward. And so, there is a decent chunk of my time, which is just on like day-to-day stuff as well.
I'm feeling very kindred to you as the longer we talk, because that's about the same amount of people that I have. It's all in Slack. Like we talk in Slack all day. And I try to spend more of my time not just helping with things that I know I can help with, and just think. Like a lot of people ask me what my job is. Like thinking is a lot of what I try to do. Is just come up with new ways to generate business or to have a vision for where we're going, and then try to be a little bit inspirational to people when they need that. So it's nice to hear that I'm in the same boat with someone else. So
Yeah. It's a bit of a juggling act, and I definitely haven't got it perfected yet. But
me neither. And like, there's no handbook. You know what I mean? Like, there's no tutorial you can go watch on how to CEO. You just have to kind of figure it out as you go. But I also try to never make it look like I'm figuring it out as I go. Well, of course, I'm So
totally. And I think also like one thing I would say on that as well is you have to kind of flex your leadership style to match the situation in the business as well. Yes. Like when I took over the business in mid 2023, we actually had the market had kind of changed, and we had to make some tricky decisions and kind of turn the company around a little bit. And I had to manage in a certain style then, which was, Ben Horowitz has this piece about like wartime leader versus peacetime leader. And that was kind of like a wartime phase. And now like I say, good management team in place, things on a good trajectory and ticking along nicely. It's kind of a different management style and different things that you focus your time on as well.
Yeah. I'm guessing that was the when content sites all took a hit, and that was like a big thing that where people were selling, and now they aren't really worth much.
Yeah, well, we kind of had a double whammy. So if you look at our business so I joined 2017 to 2020, things were great. We were growing nicely. And then 2020, our business went like completely insane in a very good way. So we had a few things. Firstly, like while COVID was bad for a lot of businesses, for online e-commerce businesses, it was very, very good, right? So those businesses were crushing. And then you had the Amazon FBA aggregators who like raised billions to buy all of these FBA businesses. And we had a lot of those businesses. So 2020 to 2022, we were like we were going very, very up and to the right. And then kind of like the market changed in 2023. Some of that was just like broader macro stuff, interest rates, inflation, all that kind of thing. The aggregators like started not doing so well. They certainly weren't buying businesses, and some of them were kind of in trouble. And then, yeah, like mid 2023 is when that algorithm change happened, and all of a sudden, like, you know, affiliate sites aren't ranking in Google anymore, and stuff like that. So, yeah, we had kind of all of that going on at the same time, basically.
Yeah, I have I don't haven't written it down, but I have like an internal timeline of every like huge setback we've had like that. Because like we used to sell a lot. To be fair, we probably shouldn't have been selling, but we sold like a lot of like Google reviews and Facebook likes and stuff like that. That was a big part of our business. And then one day PayPal was like, no, you can't do that anymore. So that's one big setback we had. And then the COVID was a setback at first, but then it like we took off from it. And then like there's a couple others that I can't talk about publicly yet, but like there's almost like a timeline of getting knocked down and having to get back up. So
totally. Yeah. And I felt that as well. And it, you know, it looked like in the last couple of months that I was like, oh, surely tariffs not going to be the next thing, is it? But it looks like that's kind of resolving itself one way or another. But I think the key thing is, you know, the last couple of years in everything have been tough. You know, I mean, you look at Microsoft just this week laying off another X thousand people. Like, it's tough out there. So I think if your business is like keeping on and is growing to any extent, then I think you're doing a really great job, you know?
Yeah. We got a couple more questions. This one is from SR. He says, how will advancements in AI and voice search I guess to twist that to our topic, how, like, you talked about it a little bit, but like it's not good to rely on one traffic source, right? Like you probably like see less value in a business that relies on a single traffic source.
Yeah, so I'm not an SEO expert, so I'm probably not quite the right person to answer that exact question. But I think like a couple of things I would mention is, one is, you know, we're still selling content sites, right? You know, we're not kind of selling as many or if any of maybe of the you know, ranking Google, send traffic to an affiliate page type websites. But the ones that are still kind of around and doing well, they typically have like something different about them, and that normally is kind of like traffic acquisition channels, right? So maybe and so I think like the content sites that are valuable now are ones that took the time to like build email lists or build social followings or all of these kind of owned media assets. That is also a little bit true in the e-commerce world as well. You know, like go back a few years and we would sell a lot of pure FBA businesses, like only selling via Amazon. The ones which are more valuable now tend to be a bit more omni-channel. Again, it's a risk thing, right? But they sell some Amazon, they have some come through a Shopify store, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was going to say one other thing, but I can't remember it.
Okay. One thing I've always told people is that if you have one or two products, you aren't in the business of whatever that product is. You're in the marketing business. It's not really a business until you have a lot of products with a lot of different traffic channels and a lot of different things. Because if you like, I don't know, like going back to Alex Hormozi, originally he just had Gym Launch. At that point, he was a marketing company. And like, I think that helps a lot with the thinking of it. Like those little drop shipping sites aren't really a business, in my opinion. They are just a marketing, and they happen to have a product. So I think getting away from that probably makes a business more valuable, right?
Yeah, it does. Yes, I mean, like most of the time, more diversification is going to be a good thing. I think the only thing where I would like take the other side of that very slightly is like on the lower kind of price points on our marketplace, where typically it is going to be like an individual buying them maybe as like a side hustle or wants to quit their job or something like that. You know, sometimes they, you know, for example, if it's like a 50K e-commerce site and it's selling across 10 different platforms, and then it's like, well, that's 10 platforms that a newbie buyer has to kind of learn. So there is like there can be such a thing as too much complexity, which is a little bit tied to the size of the business as well, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense, because like those are 10 different skills you have to learn if you have like Google and Facebook and, you know, Instagram and whatever.
Right.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. But
on a bigger business, typically there's going to be a team involved, and that will go with the business. So it's a little bit different, right?
Yeah. I guess that's, if they start at that level, that's fine. And if that's where they want to stay, that's fine. But if they want to grow, then they're going to have to add, it would be wise anyway to add those other things.
Sure. Totally.
James, I guess this is back to what was the name of the place? Weatherspoons. He says it's the best place to drink when you young guys hit your vodka and Red Bull for a $5.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Then you must not have had too much fun. Yash says, what's something to look for in people considering a big partnership or hire? Something no resume or pitch deck can show. So what do you, if you're looking to partner with someone on a business, is that something you guys see also, is like two partners buying something? And if so, what should they look for in a potential partner?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'll take it from the hiring angle that Yash asked about there, because we've done a lot of remote hiring, kind of as we've been running Empire Flippers, and we have a pretty unique way that we go about it. One of our company values or mantras that really stuck over the years is like, we don't do business with assholes. And it's funny, you have all of these nice statements about what we will do, and they never quite catch on, but that one everyone references all the time. And we're like, to the point that like, we will turn away sellers even if it's a great business, if they're like unnecessarily rude to our team or stuff like that. And I think like, our version of that when it comes to hiring is that we want to work with people that you would go to Weatherspoons and have a beer with or something, right? So the way that we do hiring in kind of a weird way, or a slightly unique way, which is the first thing we don't do resumes. We have like some basic questions we have people answer, and then we ask them to record like a 2-minute video of themselves, just like basically telling us a little bit about themselves, and we weigh pretty heavily on that video. And I like, again, this goes back years. I still have on my Mac somewhere my video that I recorded when I applied at Empire Flippers. And we will always, there are certain roles where you need some skills, right? Like if we're hiring an engineer, we might need them to know specific things. But as a general rule, we would rather like hire people who we think are a good cultural fit for the business and teach them the skills than like go for a high skilled person that we're kind of unsure about. And it's like, it's really important in our business that people are a cultural fit, because we are, we're a fully remote team. We're across all different time zones, and we do have like a certain way of working, which is, I don't want to call it always on, but it's a little bit always on, but it's high flexibility. Like if you want to go to the gym at 10 in the morning or something, then like go, no one's going to kind of check on that. But we do have this little bit of culture where we all have Slack on our phones, and we'll be kind of pinging messages at odd hours and stuff like that. And I try to be like super upfront about that with people, because for the right person, it works really well. And for the wrong person, it's absolutely terrible. So yeah, I don't know if that was a great answer to the question, Yash, but that's kind of how we think about it with hiring.
So that's, again, I'm seeing a lot of parallels because we're entirely remote as well. And we have people in every continent except for Antarctica. So it's always business hours for somebody. And I agree with the culture thing a lot. Like Yash here actually works for me.
Cool.
And Yash didn't have a particular skill set to begin with. Not that he didn't have skills, but like, he was very like always helping me and like dedicated to it. I was like, you come work for us. And there's a couple other people like that. And we have a very like fun culture like that too. At least that's how I perceive it. I hope that's how everybody else feels. And it's like, yeah, it's work, but it's also, it's almost a community in itself. So it's important. And then the phone thing is a big one too, because everybody has it on their phone. And if we had somebody who's like, I stopped working at 5 and it's 5:04, you can't message them. That would never work. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to be the person that stops working at 5 and doesn't think about it again till 9. It's just like, I think as a business, you have to be super clear about like what you can offer and find the people that's the right match for,
Yeah, definitely. When I was an employee, I was that way. You know what I mean? It's part of probably why it didn't work out that well as an employee, but yeah. So I get it.
It's funny. Last week I took Thursday and Friday as my first 2 days. I was like fully offline in a very long time, like maybe in the last 2 years. And I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but like it almost stressed me out more to be completely detached from what was going on. I like to see things and then I can be like, I don't need to do anything on that. Like I can make a decision, but not knowing at all was kind of a little unnerving, to be honest.
Did you find yourself like having to like slap your hand to like not
big time? Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. But, as a CEO, even that I don't need to deal with that is still a decision point that you just used up. Like that's something I've spent a lot of my time on is making it to where I don't even have to make decisions about things because I value my decision making power a lot. And
Sure.
because like I want to make it on the big things and not do I need to respond to this like support ticket kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not that those
Yeah,
aren't big things
totally.
too, but like, so
Yeah.
Mohammed asks, what do buyers usually look for in small digital marketing? That's a good question. Do you guys sell like agencies are a big flipping thing I've noticed now. Do you
Hmm.
guys sell any
Yeah.
agencies? And if so, what's a good looking one, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, yeah, we do. Agencies are kind of growing in popularity at the moment, I think. So there's two things that come to mind. One is, again, it goes back to the same thing of like what happens when you take the seller out of the business, right? A
Right.
lot of agencies are the seller or the owner has a skill set. They kind of like are the agency for the most part, and then maybe they add some kind of team members, but they're typically like very, very heavily involved in sales, and maybe the kind of like the brand is based around them a bit. That can be tough because obviously, again, is the golden question. That's why with agencies, you quite often see deal structures that like keep the seller involved to some extent and maybe incentivizes them to stay involved. There's some bits like that. The other big one on agencies that buyers will look for is just like not too much customer concentration. If you have like one or two whales, which is like 60, 70, 80% of your income, then again, we're back to diversification, but that's obviously risky for buyers.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's like the same stuff: team in place, good processes, documented, all that kind of thing, really.
Something I've always wondered with selling an agency is you don't really have a thing. You know what I mean? Like there's no webs, like the website is usually unimportant to like an agency. And I've struggled with that if I ever wanted to like stop because I have my other business, Superstar SEO, and if I wanted to stop that, there's really nothing for me to give them. Like I don't, it's just sales coming in. Like just they start getting the sale. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
there's no thing. And I feel like a lot of people that call themselves agencies are really just freelancers. I shouldn't say just freelancers, really are freelancers because they're just
Right.
making the sales and doing the work and making the money. It's not really a business. Is that accurate?
I mean, I would say I think like you hit on the dividing line there, right? And it goes back to like how involved is the seller. I think if you set the business up so that you have different functions which you're not doing personally, you have someone going out getting sales, and you have kind of a delivery team as well, then I would say that's a business, and they're pretty
Mm.
sellable. They're actually quite popular at the moment. So I think that it comes back to this like owner involvement piece again.
Okay. All right. That's interesting because like I don't know. Mine is not set up that way. It's not really an important part of my business. But the other thing
Mm.
you mentioned was sometimes the owner has to stay on. One of the reasons I've not really ever considered selling my main business legit is because I know I would be bad at that, and like I know that's a pretty common way of like there's like a 2 year or like I forget what the name firm is called, but they like work there as either a consultant or on the board or something, and then they exit.
Yeah.
I don't think I would do well with that because it would to me feel like having a boss, and I know I'm a shit employee.
Right.
So how do
Right.
those deals get structured, and do you ever find them to like fall apart because the CEO is a terrible employee for the like new?
Yeah, so I would say most of the deals on our marketplace, the seller is out relatively quickly.
Okay,
There's always like 30, 60 days of support or something that's
sure,
normally agreed. Um, on the ones that are the where they do stay more involved, and I think like, yeah, I have seen it more on agency type deals actually, which kind of makes sense. That relationship also has to form part of the due diligence, right? Buyers and sellers from both sides have to decide, like, is this someone I'm gonna be able to work with for the next year, 2 years, if that's kind of involved. So yeah, and like we have deals that will go into due diligence, and nothing will change in kind of like the shape of the deal. Both sides are happy with that, but the buyer and the seller just don't get on with each other during due
sure,
diligence, and that's easily enough to tank a deal. To be honest, that's enough to tank a deal even if the seller is not staying on, because like it sounds crazy. You would think sellers are just like as soon as they get the cash, they don't care. But like for a lot of our sellers, this is like their life's work. It's their
right.
baby. Like they actually care intensely about who takes the business over after them. So
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I can see passing up a good deal because of that.
mm,
It's funny. I'm listening to this book and I forget the name of it, but it's about like it's basically the Instagram origin story and how Kevin Systrom was like good friends with Jack Dorsey, and he almost sold to like Twitter, but then of course he ended up selling to Facebook because like he felt like that was like the better fit, and how he and Dorsey like were not friends for years because of that. And it's kind of the same kind of thing, but it's just like he wanted someone that knew it was going to take Instagram where he wanted it to go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've heard him tell that story, I think on Lex Friedman's podcast many years ago as well. So interesting dude.
Yeah, it's a great book. If I don't have the name, but anyway, this has been very interesting to me. Let me just so it's very clear, some of the things that you said that people should think about if they're potentially wanting to sell their businesses, even if they don't want to sell it, they should like start focusing. They should set it up to sell. They should make sure that it's not too much key man risk. Key man risk, for those that don't know, means that it's too dependent upon one person. And then it's diversified traffic sources. What have we not covered? If I'm starting to think about selling my business, what else should I consider that we haven't already covered?
Yeah, I think like the other big piece I would add in is just thinking about the financials. So like clean financials. Again, we will help build P&Ls during vetting, but when it comes to due diligence, buyers, particularly on larger deals, are going to want to see like QuickBooks and potentially tax returns, depends on the situation a little bit, but like getting ahead of that financial, even just like as simple as like paying an accountant or a bookkeeper to start like putting some books together properly. You'd be amazed how many businesses we get into our vetting process that like sellers think they're making X amount, and then when we actually pull a P&L together for them, they're like making nowhere near what they thought they were, right? Clean books, they're the main things. And then just on the diversification, like yes, of traffic, but like maybe also of products or different channels and stuff as well. Like just any kind of diversification is good.
Yeah, the books thing is an interesting point, because without getting too personal, like I've had businesses where if you looked at their tax returns, it looked like they were losing money, but that's just good tax strategy. Sometimes. Sure. You may actually be making really good money, and you just have a good accountant who's good at getting you to not have to pay taxes. So the P&L is more revealing than is that. And then, that can even be misleading too, because like spreadsheet accounting is different than P&L versus taxes. This is all shit I've had to learn on the fly as well. But.
Yeah, 100%. And so normally, like when we build up P&Ls, particularly for e-commerce businesses, we'll build them in an accrual format. So basically, because cash P&Ls, if you go out and buy 100 grand of inventory, it will look like you lost 100 grand that month, but we'll do it in an accrual basis, so you recognize the cost in the month that the product sold. So that kind of straightens out the bumps. And then, tax returns, really that's more for particularly if deals have some kind of like lending or financing on them, which some buyers do use. But like even there, exactly what you just said, obviously people are going to kind of come up with the best tax strategy that they can. And buyers understand that, and lenders understand that as well. So, as long as it's all kind of like explainable, and then there's no problem.
Yeah. These are things that like amateur and even intermediary business owners don't get, because like sometimes I don't give out my revenue numbers to anybody, but sometimes they'll ask, well, how much do you make? And I'm like, I honestly have no idea, because like it depends on, it's not that I don't have any idea, it's I don't know which number is accurate, because like
right.
Returns, I lose money, but like
right.
So it's something that I don't know. I like to bring that up from time to time, because a lot of people just don't understand that, because they're just used to thinking like an employee. I made $65,000 last year, and I paid $1,000 in taxes. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then you guys like. I'm gonna give you kind of a chance to like tell us why yours is the best here. So, you talked about how you have a much stronger vetting process and a much smaller pool of businesses available. There's a few other like popular sites in your industry. I like your model the best. What else makes you guys stand out? Like, why should we use you as opposed to Acquire, which, I'm going to say Acquire is just garbage. No offense. I follow the dude on Twitter, but I just can't even find my way around it. But you guys have a higher level, but what other reasons should they try to sell their business through you or buy a business through you?
Yeah, cool. So that's the first thing I say, is that like we have stringent vetting on both sides of our marketplace, right? So if you look at one of our listings, a lot of the number checks these days we do kind of like via API as a starting point, and we kind of spend, I think our average vetting time for businesses that go live on our marketplace is like 2 to 3 weeks. So we spend a long time kind of going through it. We also do that on the buy side, by the way, as well. So like if we have like a public marketplace where you can see redacted information about the listings. If you want to see P&Ls and kind of like specific URLs and stuff like that, you have to verify your ID and your liquidity with us as well. So we kind of, from both sides, we're only putting good listings on the marketplace. We're only putting what we think are good buyers in front of the sellers that are kind of able to buy the business. And then, like I say, we have the best platform in the industry, but we're effectively a people business at the end of the day. We have big vetting, migration, sales team. And whatever stage somebody is at in their journey, if they're like a couple of years away from selling or whatever, we're still super happy to jump on a call and kind of talk about how what you might be able to do between now and then. And I think that's kind of unique as well.
Do you have people that want to buy a business, but they don't really know what they want or what they look for? And if so, do you have like, say I just inherited $1 million. Can I come to you and be like, I want to spend this into an online business, but I don't know what to do? Like, how do you help guide them through that? If you do.
Oh yeah, we'll help you spend that $1 million. No problem at all. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I mean, so twofold. We have like our kind of buy side advisory team. They've seen hundreds and hundreds of deals and hundreds of buyers as well. So they kind of, they're good at exploring what are your skills, kind of what might be a good fit for you. We also have, through Greg's hard work, years and years of content around this stuff as well. So like our blog is a treasure trove of identifying kind of what might make the right business for you. So yeah, absolutely.
That was, and maybe you can tell me if it was the case for you guys as well. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I know it's a little different, but when I started our marketplace, I just assumed that people knew what they wanted, and we were just kind of the mall. I equated us to the mall. Like you go to the mall and you want to buy some plants and you'll go to like Belk and the Gap or wherever people buy clothes. I don't really know, but what I learned was that they wanted us to do all that work for them too. And that's part of the direction that we're taking now, is giving them tools and people to help them do that. So I'm guessing what I'm asking you is, was that always a thing that you knew was something, or is it something you guys had to learn along the way as well?
I think, to be honest, and I hope it's come as like a byproduct of our good reputation, is that like buyers come to us and will ask us for advice, and like we legitimately want them to buy good businesses that they can be successful with. So we'll try and give good advice over like what we've seen work elsewhere and what might be a fit for them. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's always just it's come about as like part of reputation and how long we've been in the space, basically.
Okay. That would have saved me at least a couple of years, because like, I guess I thought I did that thing that business owners do where they think that they're the target audience. I struggle a lot, and like, because I always knew what I wanted to buy and I just assumed other like SEOs and agencies did too. And they don't, and they buy like the wrong thing and they blame us. So that's like one of the big problems we're solving now. So that's just,
yeah, that makes total sense. I think that's true in so many different places, right? Like sometimes, we were talking about something the other day and I was like, it must have been something AI related. And it's kind of like, oh, everybody's doing that. Everybody knows that, right? And you don't realize like how much of an online bubble we're in. And then you like talk to friends in the normal world and they're like, what's that thing?
Yeah, they like an example is somebody I know, and I don't want to embarrass them, so I won't give the exact story, but like they couldn't figure out how to figure out this thing they were trying to do. I was like, just go ask ChatGPT. That's what everybody does.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't know that. I thought it just wrote about content.
Yeah. It's crazy how AI native kids are going to be, though. Whenever I don't know the answer to anything, my 4-year-old gives me maybe you should ask ChatGPT. Like he's caught on straight away.
Wow, that's crazy, because it's literally been there his entire life. Well, more or less. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like, even now, I still have to like train myself to like go there instead of Google, and that's probably not good for somebody in the SEO industry to say, but I get better answers from AI than I do from that. And but
SEO is just kind of moving over to that stuff now anyway, right? Like it's going to be its second wind, and we actually we see a bunch of our traffic come through the LLMs now, like ChatGPT. So yeah,
well, that's actually like a lot of where I spend my time now, is trying to crack that code, and I kind of have, I think, but that's another topic for another day. But
Cool.
AI has definitely affected my business in both positive and negative ways, because like our number 2 category was content for up until 2022. And then I can literally see from the month ChatGPT came out till now, like completely down into the
Yeah,
of
for
it.
sure.
So like 97% less. So,
Mm.
but you have to pivot, right? So anyway, I'm rambling. We're almost out of time. Anything else you want to share with us, or other than going to empireflippers.com, anywhere else people should go or anything like that?
Yeah, so empireflippers.com. I guess the only other 2 things I would say. One is like we have a real good referral program. So if anybody refers someone who either buys or sells a business with us, we give them a portion of our fee, 20%. We've paid out multiple high 5-figure referral payments, which is always kind of cool. Finally, as well as empireflippers.com, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So would love kind of people to hook up with me there as well. That's it. Been awesome. Really enjoyed it.
And also your company has a great YouTube channel. I've been on it myself.
Yep.
Check that out as well. Greg does a great job with that. So
he does.
All right. Well, thank you for being on. I know we had a little bit of technical issues in getting in the beginning, but I personally gained a lot out of this. And plus I feel like I've met some kindred spirit in the
Yeah.
So our stories are so similar. So thank you for being on. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. But all right, I think that's going to do it, unless there's anything else you want to add.
All good. Thank you, man. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. All right. Everybody else, I don't have a schedule of anybody else coming on anytime soon, but if there's somebody awesome you'd like me to interview, connect me and we'll be happy to do it. Otherwise, figure out what you want out of life and go out and get it, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the world. I'll see you next time. Peace.